any form of competitive racing, it's paramount that you don't stumble coming out of the blocks. A bad start rarely yields a strong finish. That's not exactly the case in professional wrestling, where each match can be judged on its own merits, but a pay-per-view that begins with a crummy match will have a hard time righting the ship. A failure of a curtain jerker can lose the crowd, kill the vibe, and put undue pressure on the bouts that follow. It's the obligation of the opener to get the party started. Alas, the examples ahead were akin to turning up already drunk, throwing up on everyone's shoes, passing out in the doorway, and soiling yourself to boot. And just as a note, this won't include matches that abruptly ended due to injury. It'd be hard to playfully ridicule something with such serious connotations. I'm Sam Driver from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 worst wrestling pay-per-view opening matches. Join us! Number 10. John Cena vs. Baron Corbin at SummerSlam 2017. Remember when Baron Corbin cashing in on Jinder Mahal was a thing? It's little wonder those Tuesday night SmackDown tapings drew smaller crowds than an Antarctic beach party. Corbin's attempted Money in the Bank cash-in on metric hindering Jinder was thwarted by borderline part-time Cena, leading to a SummerSlam opener pitting Johnny Jorts against balding Baron. Common horse sense had Corbin putting up a good showing against WWE's Babe Ruth to justify pushes down the line. What actually happened was that half-assed Cena clowned Corbin for the majority of the 10-minute match, at no point making the WWE pet project look like a threat before definitively pinning him. Of all of Big Match John's big matches, this was probably the only one where he took time to goof off with JBL's hat. Rumor had it that Corbin's swift D-push was in relation to him calling out Dr. Joseph Maroon during a recent concussion-related talent meeting, noting the conflict of interest in Maroon's relationship with the once concussion-denying NFL. Whether connected or not, Corbin was uncharacteristically treated like a dope by the face of WWE here. Number 9. Dr. Britt Baker vs. Big Swole at All Out 2020. Funny thing about this match is that it wasn't even supposed to take place on the pay-per-view. Baker and Swole's tooth and nail cinematic match was slated for the buy-in portion of All Out, before outcry from online fans demanded that it be put in the main broadcast. Tony Khan acquiesced to the will of the people and slotted the match into the onset of the main card. Caveat emptor, as they say. Baker and Valet Rebel, not Reba, had a good comedy act going at the time, but only so many of the charms could be evident during 6.5 minutes of clunky brawling and comic visuals that didn't always land. The match took place at Baker's dental offices and featured weapons like PhD plaques, dental drills, and even a Novocaine reversal spot. Only Rebel's guttural cry of "you stabbed her" salvages something that, in all fairness, was probably better served on the pre-show, maybe the second hour of Dynamite. Number 8. Brock Lesnar vs. Cain Velasquez at WWE Crown Jewel 2019. Remember when Lesnar just crushed Kofi Kingston like a bug in 8 seconds to win the WWE title, and Kofi Mania was reduced to being a smiling, happy-go-lucky mid-carder the following week? Pure F-U, we got your money WWE at its fresh and finest. But of course, there was a totally valid reason to have Kofi eat the humiliating pin, because WWE needed to book a kayfabe rematch to a UFC fight from 9 years earlier, because they were promised a big, beautiful check. Lesnar vs. Velasquez 2, this time it's scripted, was 2 minutes of flimsy mixed martial awfulness, with nothing of note happening until Lesnar popped up and snared Velasquez in a Kimura lock for the submission. The match was so short that the stranded wrestlers could have watched it 720 times over the 24 hours they spent waiting for the airplane's purported mechanical issues to be fixed. Near as anyone honest could tell, the only actual mechanical issues were on full display in this belated, unasked-for UFC callback. Number 7. The Tuwake Mountain Trophy Gauntlet match at Super Showdown 2020. As of 2025, this is technically The Undertaker's last in-ring match. That could very well change down the line, especially if WWE ever needs to counter-program another AEW pay-per-view with an arbitrary retirement match or something, but as it currently stands, Undertaker's minimal participation in a protracted gauntlet match for a supposedly prestigious trophy that's never been competed over before or since was his last in-ring soiree. And the dead man wasn't even a scheduled participant. Somehow, erstwhile mid-carder R-Truth survived Bobby Lashley, Andrade, and Eric Rowan in succession, before being submitted by AJ Styles. Final entrant Rey Mysterio was then beaten down backstage by the Good Brothers, seemingly giving Styles the trophy via forfeit. But then, our fearless locker room leader, who just so happened to be in Riyadh checking out real estate prices or something, sauntered glacially to the ring and finished Styles off with the bare minimum, all without removing his hat or duster. At least when Norm Macdonald finishes a long, pointless story with an unsatisfying payoff, you appreciate his masterful absurdity. This was certainly absurd, but it was hardly masterful. Number 6, the Chamber of Horrors match at Halloween Havoc 1991. Alright, enough of the recent tripe, let's kick it old school. WCW in 1991 was a trip and a half, as the promotion totally buckled following the firing of reigning world champion Ric Flair and the continued swathe of Jim Herd's stupidity. Here's one of the Emmy Award winners that sprung up during his stewardship. An 8-man tornado match inside a giant weapons-filled cage, where the object is to zap one opponent inside a descending electric chair. Clearly, mandatory drug testing didn't extend to the creative committee. Sting, the Steiners, and El Gigante warred with Vader, Scott Hall, Cactus Jack, and Abdullah the Butcher in a truly aimless, directionless hardcore match, partially filmed via camera mounted on the referee's head. Eventually, the electric chair lowered and Cactus was the one who threw the switch, but only after Rick Steiner switched places with Abdullah during a long, awkward sequence where Cactus had to wait and pretend to not notice what was happening. Even Rick Knox would be like, wow, that guy's pretty oblivious. Thus, poor Abby rode the lightning to mercifully end the farce. Number 5, Dustin Rhodes versus the Blacktop Bully at Uncensored 1995. If you thought opening a pay-per-view with the bastardized cousin of Hell in a Cell was something, try this one on for size. In the mid-90s, the former Demolition Smash turned up in WCW as the Bully, a surly truck driver that had a bone to pick with the Rhodes family. He and Dustin feuded for a few months before things came to a head in the first ever King of the Road match. Filmed in the days beforehand, Rhodes and Bully fought on the back of a moving tractor trailer, brawling among hay, metal objects, and other hazards like sudden braking. Reportedly, over 30 minutes of fight footage was shot, and then haphazardly edited down to 13 minutes for TV. And I do mean haphazardly. The natural light goes from dusk to super bright and back to dusk, with no regards for continuity. Also, the filming made it near impossible to tell what was going on. Stupefied fans in the arena watched on the big screen as Bully won, and then the next day both Bully and Rhodes were fired for getting color. Net positive? 0. Number 4, Dean Malenko versus Billy Kidman at Sold Out 2000. If you're familiar with these two men and don't know the story, you're undoubtedly a little confused. How could two gifted workers have a match worthy of this list? Well, Sold Out 2000 was already a cursed show, given injuries to world champion Bret Hart and US champion Jeff Jarrett, as well as the firing of Vince Russo, which set the ascending mid-carders into an uproar. Truly a different time. So because of all of this, hasty changes needed to be made to the card. Instead of a 3 stages of hell match between Jarrett and Chris Benoit, Kidman was made to run a 3 stages gauntlet against 3 members of the Revolution. Stage 1 with Malenko was a catch-as-catch-can rules match, meant to play to Malenko's strengths as a supreme technician. The problem was, Malenko forgot the match rule that says you'd be disqualified if you left the ring. Malenko absent-mindedly did just that, powdering off a Kidman flurry 2 minutes into the match. He tried to continue, only to be informed that the match was now over. Oops. Number 3, The Fiend vs. Randy Orton at WrestleMania 37 Night 1. 3 words: box-like structure. God damn it, Michael, it's a box! I know people praise Michael Cole more these days, but anybody who's that beholden to reciting Vince's verbiage word for word, their spine might be waiting for them at the lost and found in some box, or at least a box-like structure. Anywho, The Fiend vs. Orton proved to be the end of Bray Wyatt's Fiend character, though nobody knew it going in. And boy, what a match to go out on. There's all the usual Fiend ballyhoo, red lights, fire, Alexa Bliss as a creepy living doll, while Orton tries to wrestle around the eccentricity. Finally, after 5 minutes of a match that feels far too pedestrian given the circumstances, Fiend is suddenly distracted by Alexa bleeding Pennzoil from her scalp. In fact, Fiend's distracted long enough to be pinned with a soul RKO, before apparently being banished to the Phantom Zone. The man might live in your nightmares, but he's just as susceptible to distraction finishes as any other WWE talent. Sounds about right. Number 2, PN News and Bobby Eaton versus Steve Austin and Terry Taylor at Great American Bash 1991. The 1991 Bash is emblematic of a promotion in freefall. The sudden firing of world champion Ric Flair by Jim Herd 2 weeks earlier led to virtual mutiny from the audience and proved how dire the organization would be if Nate weren't there to have his usual 4.5+ star match. Case in point, this opener between 3 strong workers and an alleged rapper that makes the Wrestle Rock Rumble look like straight out of Compton. Oh yeah, did I mention this was a scaffold match as well? For 7.5 agonizing minutes, the 4 wrestlers moseyed, shambled, baby-stepped, and crawled on the scaffold over the top of the ring, while fans impatiently waited for somebody to get thrown off the damn thing. Literally nothing happened, and then Eaton retrieved a flag on one side of the scaffold and returned it to the other side. That was the ending. It was capture the flag rules, but the audience weren't told that. Nobody understood the match had ended until all 4 men started climbing down the sides of the structure. Totally worth the time spent erecting the thing. And number 1, Daniel Bryan versus Sheamus at WrestleMania 28. Alright, look, there's some considerable Stockholm Syndrome that's sprung up from this moment, where defenders ardently claim that the booking actually benefited Bryan because it put sympathy on him. It's not entirely false, but that clearly wasn't the intent. The idea was to take cowardly gaslighting boyfriend Bryan and have him get his comeuppance from a beastly bully babyface, similar to how Warrior crushed Honky in 1988. Problem was, the dynamic was all wrong. Bryan benefited ultimately because fans refused to give up on him as a should-be hero, a level of support that WWE spent the next 2 years aggressively challenging. But Bryan wasn't the biggest victim here. Sheamus was. The big man's 18-second one-move victory over Bryan did the scripted good guy 0 favors. For the rest of his 7-month reign, he received at best lukewarm reactions from crowds, something that a long and excruciating feud with Alberto Del Rio wasn't going to fix. It's a match that epitomizes WWE's insistence upon controlling narratives. Audience sentiment be damned. And craziest of all, this is what WWE opened its biggest show of the year with.